Welcome back to the R.E.A.L.Talk Coaching Podcast. We're a community of change makers where we navigate uncertainty, rediscover purpose, and boldly answer the question, what's next? Or the question, what do you really want? And together with you, we're more than a conversation. We're a movement, helping all of us to reimagine life beyond titles, struggle, expectations. We approach these conversations through a coaching lens, meaning our goal isn't to provide the answers. It's just to help us all explore new perspectives and possibilities. And so today we are diving into part two of our professional pivot series, right? We want to look at the reality of how our own paths have deviated after the federal disruptions of 2025. Last week, I talked about the reality of building a coaching business and being underemployed while I do it. And so this week, we're talking about what happens when your heart still wants to serve the public, but the government engine that used to drive you is gone. And so, Coach Sharon, in addition to everything else that you have going on in early retirement, you went out and launched a whole nonprofit. So, cue us in. How did you decide to go down that road?
Well, actually, it was part of my pivot. So, as you all know, I have my own business, and my business initially was focused just on coaching. I was like, I'm a coaching business, it's going to be great. But it wasn't as great as I thought it was going to be trying to launch a coaching business and just focus on coaching. And so I attended a business boot camp that was specifically geared for federal women. And during that time, the um, the person that led it, the lady, she was just awesome. And she took the time to meet with each one of us. It was a very small cohort. She took the time to meet and know and get to learn each one of us. And she just has the gift to pull things out that we would never think about doing ourselves. So for me, she recommended that I pivot from what I was doing with my for-profit business and focus on federal benefits and retirement. And it was a great time to do that because of what was going on in the federal space. And that helped me to really boost and launch that. But in addition, she also recommended that I start a nonprofit and that it focus on helping women that are like 35 or older and pivot because of there's so many, and we talk about this many times, the 400,000 Black women that were displaced from federal directly and indirectly by what was going on in the federal government. So helping those type of women to pivot into a different career. And so that's how my nonprofit got started. And I'm really excited about what it is because it's not only helping them in that space, but it's also going to be addressing food insecurities. There are a lot of food deserts around. Um, just uh, those are the main two right now. It's a lot on my mind that I would like to do and expand, but those are the main two. And the first one that launching is a program is called Build Her Futures. And that one is the one where we're going to be helping the women 35 and over to just pivot into vocational type of positions. And it doesn't mean that they have to actually do like the work, like they don't have to be the one who's uh changing the HVAC or whatever. But if they have administrative skills and want to learn more about that particular industry, then they would be more marketable with having the information on how does all that work within, HVAC and still use those administrative skills? So um, really that's how I got started. It wasn't something that automatically, wow, came to me one day, but it was something that someone saw within me and was like, I think that you could do this.
Hmm. Excuse me. Sharon, you mentioned the business boot camp kind of being a catalyst, maybe, or an inspiration, guidance to start the nonprofit. And so I just wonder, you come working in the federal government, you come from a space where decisions are made, every few years, or they take years to make to be implemented. There are a lot of procedures, a lot of signatures, a lot of red tape, as people would say, that you have to go through to kind of get things stood up, get things operationalized. So, how did you handle, or did you even feel like, how did you handle imposter syndrome? Excuse me, how did you handle imposter syndrome when you think about calling yourself a founder?
Yeah.
You know, I think that's something I've struggled with for a long time, not just in this space, but over the years of my career, because I've been really blessed to be able to move up in my federal career to different positions, going as far as being a branch chief and just doing the work, but never really giving myself the recognition, me personally within, that I was a subject matter expert in those areas. It was, I'm just doing the work, and I remember being in a meeting one time, and it was a lot of like other higher graded people, and I think at the time it was our maybe acting director, and she was sitting beside me, and they were going around the room and saying, hey, I'm here because of XYZ. And when they came to me, I was like, I don't know why I'm here. And she was like, you're here because you know the work and you're supposed to be here, and I was like, okay, but it still took me a while to really embrace that, and moving into, my for-profit in that space, and my nonprofit, which I mentioned the name of the program, but the actual nonprofit is called the Opportunity Door. And so with that, it has been I still kind of challenging because we have our first kind of exposure coming up this Saturday, August 1st, in the community. And I am nervous about it. I'm nervous about going out there and engaging with the community, how they might accept us. Now, we're not just out there on our own, we're going to be out there as a partner with another event. But the purpose is to learn what the community wants. We know what we want to give the community, but what is it that the community actually needs from us? And how can we best provide it? And then, talking to people who not only are going to be, potential participants, but board members, volunteers, donors, it's like it was way more, it's way more than I really thought about doing this, nonprofit. You just hear nonprofit, boom, or someone starting a business, but you don't think about all that goes into developing these things, because a nonprofit is a business. And people, at least I didn't think of it as the same, because you hear nonprofit. It's not, you think it's not making money, but it is making money, and it needs money depending on how, you do things. So it's the imposter syndrome of me calling myself a founder. It's it's still there. I'm gonna say, but I think as I get out more and start to promote more, um, I told people about it and they are really supportive. So I think just as I en- embrace it and develop more, then that won't be an issue over time.
Yeah, you know, Coach Tara talked about, you went from a world where like decisions take 3 years, to make, and everything requires 15 signatures even to buy a pen or a pencil. And now, as the founder, if your printer breaks, there's no help desk for you right now, right?
Yeah.
It's just you and the Lord shaking the toner cartridges.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And even Coach Terry, going back to that about being in that space where, it takes 3 years and 16 signatures and up and down the, the hierarchy or whatever. A lot of decisions are made for you. They're not made with you. You're not always part of that team. It's like you can give your opinion, you can say, what the best thing is, but then ultimately the decision comes back. It's not your decision. We have decisions in those spaces when we are working for somebody else. We have those decisions made for us.
Yes.
So being in a space where I can make the decisions for myself. I have to evaluate what's best for not just me. And really, it's not about me, it's about service. And so it's like, what is it that I need to do? And so that's why I said, you know, yes, I told you about what the program is that we want to launch, but is that really what the community needs? I hope so, but I'll have to find out by engaging with them and learning more. I have never been a part of a board before, ex- except for one other nonprofit, and that one is still in its infancy. So I've volunteered with different organizations, but never been really part of the leadership or the interworkings. Again, it's that kind of, I'm gonna say, employee mentality. You go in, they tell you what to do, you do the task, and then that's it. So
Yes.
now I'm part of the leadership. And I also have to make sure that I am working as a team, right? I can't say that always this is, mine. Even though I'm the founder, I have to make sure that I'm working as a team. So that's something that I had to really learn in the federal space. Initially, when I was a branch chief, I knew we were a team and I would say we were a team, but the decisions ultimately had to be me because then I was accountable and the people higher above me, my supervisor and second level and everything, they would come down on me if my team wasn't functioning well. So I wouldn't go back and ask them, what's, you know, what can we do to make this better? Or even if I did, I still would get information from my supervisor and say, no, we're not going to do that. You need to do this. So now I am sitting back and saying, okay, what do we need to do? And then I'm being quiet. And I'll say, I'm just going to be quiet while y'all, talk because I don't want to be the only voice. And I don't have the all the answers. And I don't want to have all the answers. I always ask for feedback. I always ask, for people for their thoughts because it is a team, even though I might have the title of founder or president or executive director or whatever it is it's a team. And we want to create it where people feel included as well as leaving a legacy. It's not about just having the nonprofit. And when I'm gone, if it's no longer in existence, you know, if I'm not able to attend a meeting or be in an event, it still should go on. And that's what I'm trying to make sure that I'm doing by creating this, um, you know, for those that are being a part of the nonprofit.
You know, that's interesting because, when you retired earlier than you had planned, it could have been so easy for you to just going about your way, right? Um, it could have been really easy for you to be cynical about, getting back out there and this time doing things your own way. And starting a nonprofit takes a lot of faith. So, how did you fight against that fear? Fear of imposter syndrome, fear of everything else, fear of the unknown itself, so that you could actually see what was missing, what gaps were there in the community that needed to be filled.
Um, oh, so over this past, year of being outside the federal government allowed me to engage more with people who are either still in the government or have left the government for various reasons. And in my engagement, no matter what race they are, no matter where they're geographically located, still hearing the same things because of how most people left over this past year. Um, so I know that a lot of people are struggling. I know a lot of people are hurting. They don't know what their their next is, what their next journey is for them. Like for me, I knew that once I left federal government, then I had my business, my for-profit business that I was going to do. But a lot of people didn't, and they either have to find a job in a job market that's very saturated, trying to, you know, get get to whatever they need. As we discussed in the last episode, you know, how you, Coach Terry, was out there, still trying to survive, basically, in a space that you weren't used to being in. And Coach Terry, you still being in a space where you are dealing with the repercussions of everything. So for me, um, yeah, I'll be cynical sometimes, because we know that there was no need for it. But hearing from everyone is helps me to know like what the gaps are, and then um, it also helps me to like determine how what I can do to fill the gaps. Now, one thing I say is like when I think any person who's like starts a nonprofit or not even starts a nonprofit who has that heart to serve, you're trying to do everything, and we do that as women, we do that as Black women. We talked about that before, putting on that superwoman cape and saying, I'm going to solve all the world problems. But we have to do what's in our bandwidth. And it's nothing wrong with asking for help. It's nothing wrong with saying, I I can't, I'm not going to do that. Like, it's not about that. I can't do that. Like, I'm not going to do that. Like that's just not going to happen. Um, so I think going back to what you had asked me about, making sure that I have faith. It takes every day, every moment that, being able to say, okay, I said I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna see it through. Because I have in the past started stuff and it stopped because of imposter syndrome. I didn't believe that I could actually fulfill the things that I had thought, even though they were great ideas. Um, I just was like, oh, I can't do that, or let other people shrink within me what I, wanted to do. So this time I was like, I'm going to do it. And who goes with me goes with me. And those who don't, it's okay. Maybe it just wasn't the right time for them. And that's okay.
Mhm. Sounds like you are really reimagining your this next journey that you're on. Um, so, Coach Sharon, a lot of our listeners and people that we've spoken to, and coached over the last year, feel like they lost their purpose when they lost their federal position or lost their career over the last year because they thought that that was their job, they were doing well, they were going to retire, people had a plan. So what did having to leave the federal service at a time that was not specifically the time that you were choosing to leave, what did that teach you about your true mission?
Well, I'll say just for me personally, like 2025, I knew that was the year that I was becoming fully eligible to retire. And for those who are listening and don't understand what that means that I met the minimum retirement age, had the amount of years of service. So if I wanted to say peace, I could do that at any time. So I actually had been counting down. I had talked to my financial planner to say, hey, if I leave in 2025 specifically, I was looking at around my birthday. So I was like, if I leave during that month, what would things look like for me? And so having that conversation about a year or so prior to me actually leaving gave me comfort in saying, okay, I can walk away from this job because I saw it as just that. Now, I love the mission of the agency I work for. I love the people that I worked with. I feel like my last 5 to 6 years in this federal space were probably for me the best years because of the so much involvement and the things that I was able to really do. I feel like I like really blossomed, um, uh, not the professionally, but personally, um, getting out and knowing, getting to meet the two of you, as well as so many others virtually. Like we really just like would be in the same area for years. Worked in that same, you know, same location for years, but through COVID, we were able to connect and meet. And so that really helped me, like to start to be able to be more active and everything. So, and all that, we look at how God works and um, just knowing that, he does have a purpose for us. He does have a calling for us. The thing is that sometimes we don't acknowledge it. We don't feel like it is really what we want or um, have the imposter syndrome um, or whatever it is. It's just sometimes we don't even really know what it is at that time. But one thing I can say is that um, the first thing that came to mind is that God never fails. And so when we look at like our values, then we'll know that there's something that we do that will align with our purpose because those things are really connected. Um, and we understand once we do that, that it doesn't matter what grade level you are. When I was a branch chief and I was working with SCSs down to, you know, um, people who worked like secretarial, administrative, and people, and I have worked with people like this who have that hierarchy mindset where I don't talk to you because you're not this grade level. Um, But for me, it was like I had the information and knowledge that no matter what grade level you were, you still had to come to me. And not like arrogant type of thing, but I'm going to talk to you as the administrator of the agency the same way I'm going to talk to your executive assistant, the same way I'm going to talk to your receptionist at the front desk who comes in your office, the same way I would talk to the security guard who might have been a federal employee or someone out in the field, an oceanographer or a meteorologist or, like I said, an admin person or whatever their position was. I'm going to talk to you the same way and give you the same information. Excuse me. I'm going to give you the same information. So we have to get beyond those titles. We know that those agencies come and go, and we saw that. We saw how agencies were just dismantled in a just a stroke of a pen, and it was dismantled. So we have to understand that there's more for us out there, and we can't always be connected to the titles.
And that's so true. You talk about with the stroke of a pen, an agency can totally go away. Lives can totally be disrupted. And when that avenue is no longer available, we talked about that government engine that drives us earlier. When that's no longer available, there's another question on the side of that, right? It is a loss, but we can also look at it as a possibility. So now that you don't need permission from all that bureaucracy that you're in, what can you build when you no longer need that permission, when you are no longer a part of that bureaucratic engine? Like, what can you build, audience, when you no longer have that? I've had to ask myself that question. Coach Sharon is talking about how she asked herself that question. And we want to know, your thoughts about what you think you can build, when you're no longer waiting for permission from 7 different people and needing 15 different signatures because you're not on that government train anymore.
Mhm. I think that I'm not there, but um, there's got to be a, excuse me, a freedom, right? And realizing that your impact,
Yeah.
excuse me, doesn't have to fit inside an org chart anymore, right? Like you don't have to be tied to, like you were saying, Coach Sharon, that hierarchy, that structure, no matter where you fit in that space, right? Like you can now look around your community and really ask yourself, and say, I see a need and I have something to offer. I know I've asked some of my clients in this, who have pivoted or are pivoting, what can you now do? What do you now have time to do that you never had the time to do before? And that kind of ties back into that, really looking at your values and the community around you and looking for those gaps and how does it fit? What really feels good to you to be able to do for others, excuse me, around you that you just didn't have the time for before. As you said, Coach Terry, what can you build now that you don't have to ask 15 people for approval and wait 3 years for somebody to make a decision that really doesn't take into account what you feel and what you truly want to see as your own mission.
Yeah. Coach Sharon, you've talked about going from serving inside that large system, right? That federal system, to now creating something on your own for other people. And so I just what has that taught you about your own capacity, what you're capable of?
Um, well, one thing I thought about is being busy versus um, having action, you know. So we can all be busy, you know. We can be busy just doing stuff, doing tasks, preparing. I'm preparing. I'm preparing. I'm preparing. What are you preparing for? Like, when are you actually going to take those steps, those action steps, in order to get you to what you say that you're preparing for? Like, what is it that you really want? And I think that's something, you know, you said, Coach Terry, in the intro, you know, it's like, what is it that you think you want? Like, because sometimes we'll say what we think we want, but what is it that you really want? That's what it is. What is it that you're really looking for within yourself? So instead of just being busy and planning and saying, you know, well, we need to start, we need to do this, we didn't, no, just do it. Just do it. 4 years ago, I said I wanted to do a podcast. I went on Facebook Live and had did one once a month. I said, my capacity is once a month. People do it weekly. I said, I have a capacity to do once a month because I felt like anything else would be overwhelming. And so I have been able to be consistent every month to have something posted, sometimes twice a month. But it's just been a blessing to be able to say, okay, every month, even when I was like, oh, I think I'm gonna stop and just kind of take a break for a little while, then I'll meet somebody else that sounds like they could be a great guest and just have, you know, it's like, okay, I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna do it again. So, you know, it's just doing it. Um, and despite what people may see when they see me online or talk to me, I am an introvert. Like I I enjoy like being by myself sometimes in the midst of other people, you know, just being all for um, engaging with people. It takes me a while to do. But I had to move out of that in order to get to where I am now. I had to move out of that space. And sometimes that being an introvert, people, I used to say I was shy when I was young, is really fear. It's really fear of not doing well, not living up to others' expectation, that people pleasing, that if you are successful once, then you I gotta do that same success again. You know, it's all can be part of fear. As I'm sitting here thinking back, like how I used to say I was shy, I was really afraid that I was going to do something and mess up. And then people were like, oh, she messed up. Or as I got older, or if I did it successfully, that means I have to do it that same success or even better the next time. If I do it well, I do it well. When my podcast, if I have issues with with bandwidth and things, they're not perfect, but I get it out there and people, they enjoy it. I get feedback, even when I don't think people are watching. People will say, oh, I see you out there all the time. And I was like, oh, you do? Like, I don't see any engagement from you, but that doesn't mean anything. So I'll say to those of you that are listening, just do that one step that will get you to that next level, whatever that next level is for you, even if it's like not a full level, it's like half a level or 1/4 of a level. It gets you beyond where you already are. So you can say, I did it. And now I'm ready to do the next part and next part. They say you can how to eat an elephant one bite at a time. How can you eat anything? Most things you eat one bite at a time. So don't feel like it's overwhelming. Calm yourself down, say a prayer, say a meditation, whatever it is that helps you. Take some deep breaths, ground yourself, and then just go.
I like that. I like that. Just go, just start, right? I know I've asked my clients at times, what's the easiest step to take, right, as your first step? Because like you said, you just get started. And then I feel like the universe, as you mentioned, Sharon, will keep propelling you to keep doing it. like you said, you run into that future guest all of a sudden, that's like, oh, you'd be great. Or someone in your community is like, oh, I listen all the time. You wouldn't know, but now that we run into each other, I'm telling you. So I like that advice for our audience is to, really think about what is that first step, no matter how big or small it may seem to you, right? Just take it and see what happens. Um, so, when leaving a long career, sometimes we think we're starting over. But here in this space, right, we want people to just think about it as reimagining, right, their future, reimagining their next steps or their path, right? Because we're not starting over. You didn't lose any of the skills, the knowledge, the abilities that you had. You still have them. They're still going with you forward. Um, so I think it's important for our listeners to take that as a mantra, right? You're not starting over.
Mhm.
You are just reimagining your
Yeah,
future.
yeah, yeah. And I would say it's not always about the skills that you have in that immediate time. Like you might gain new skills. I mean, we know someone who now is working in with childcare. That's not what she did as a federal employee, and getting certifications and really thriving and enjoying what she's doing now after she's left the federal government. So sometimes it's about like reimagining, pivoting, you know, you might want to go back to school. You might want to get a certification. You might want to do nothing. and then and all of those things are okay for you for that time, because later on you might decide to do something and you might decide to stop doing something. And so it's it's so much, out there for us, and being able to embrace who we are at that time. You're not too old, you're not too young. It's not just for a man, it's not just for a woman, you know, it's for you. And God will place it in your path. If it's really for you, then it's going to smack you upside the head like it did me. Like I kept running from benefits and retirement for years. And, and it was like, this is what you need to do this. And so I was just like, okay, let me just go ahead and start doing it. And it's been great.
Yeah. What would it look like to have, for Jesus to be your ladder, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jesus to be the where you get to that next step, right? And what would it feel like to be free of the bondage of some bureaucracy or organization where the mission doesn't always meet up with the value, right? and maybe the question isn't what am I qualified to do now? What can I do now? I don't know what to do. Maybe the questions that we should be thinking, myself included, is what do I already know how to do that the world still needs, right? What do I know how to do that the world still needs? The world doesn't stop needing you because you're not working for the federal government or wherever you were working last year when all of this happened. There's still a great need for a great many things. And it's just about finding what that thing is that you can provide that people need. And so I want to really thank you, Coach Sharon, for sharing that, professional pivot. I almost don't like the word pivot because it's been used so much, but honestly, there wasn't another word that I could think of just now. So, but for your, the your professional flexibility, your professional, um, I don't know, reinvention, reimagination, thank you for sharing it. Because it's important to see, for people to see, okay, she was here, this happened, now she's doing what she really wants to do or what she's been called to do. That will reach many people who will then go on and do the same thing, in a way paying it forward, the things that you're doing. And so we really thank you for sharing that. And for the rest of us, if you're a former federal employee, or just an employee who just feels disconnected from what your purpose is, we just want to leave you with a question, right? Are you waiting for your organization or some other established institution to give you permission to help someone, when you actually have the power to just step out in faith and influence your community or provide that service or that product yourself right now? And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe to this podcast. It's important to like and subscribe because it reaches more people. So share the podcast. Send us an email at info@R.E.A.L.Talk Coaching.net to book your next coaching call with us. If you'd like to be a special guest, please feel free to use that email as well. It's really that simple. And just remember to keep reimagining everything about life. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.